Okay, welcome everyone to the Funding Impact Measurement Working Group for September 24th. This is a CHAOSS community meeting, so we are under the CHAOSS Code of Conduct, so keep that in mind and please be kind to each other. Who do we want to facilitate this one? Kaylin, do you want to do it since you're facilitating the bit later? Or I don't know, Paul, do you want to facilitate it since you have the first presentation? Or do you want me to do it since I don't have anything in particular going on in this meeting?
I can facilitate the first half if, Khalid, you want to jump in with the feedback session. Does that make sense?
It makes sense and it works for me.
Lovely.
Cool. All right, well, I'll just turn it over to Paul since you've got the first thing on the agenda for the slide series.
Lovely. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and for the sake of time, we will try and keep it to a fairly sharp 10 minutes. Can you guys see my screen? Can you see the slides? No?
Not
Nope.
yet.
Not yet.
Dark.
It looks
Dark
like
screen.
it's still loading. It's sort
It
of,
says your screen sharing has started, but we can't see your slides.
Wait, hold on. Let me try it another way. I'll do it this way. Right, you're seeing it now, yeah?
No, we just see you.
Oh man. Sorry. Text out. Wait 1 second.
I mean, it's nice to see you as well.
Thanks, Khalid.
So don't say sorry.
Wait, let me try. Okay, are you seeing a screen now with slides on it?
No.
What? Okay, hold on.
Maybe I can try to join and
Yes, now we
share the
do.
screen.
No, okay, perfect, great. Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Let's go back to where we are. Lovely. Okay, I'm going to set a timer, and we'll keep this short and sweet. But yeah, as everyone will know, the whole point of this group is to talk about measuring the impact of funding, and Laia and myself are from Sovereign Tech Agency. Laia has just joined as a working student research assistant data scientist, a little bit of everything, and is supporting with our kind of MVP approach to using quantitative analysis to measure our impact. And we wanted to use this next couple of slides, next 10 minutes, to just briefly run down our approach and what we're doing, and report back on some early results. To set the context a little bit, going to use the obvious XKCD comic, but for those of you who don't know the Sovereign Tech Agency, we're trying to invest in those random projects maintained by kind of Nebraska types, the really critical open source projects that are foundation of all modern digital infrastructure. We do this specifically through the Sovereign Tech Fund, which invests in the development, improvement and maintenance of these foundational open digital technologies. Specifically, we do this by paying maintainers to do critical work on their projects. And this can cover a wide variety of maintenance work, from kind of more community-oriented stuff, documentation, testing, developer tooling, maintainer quality of life, even security. For us as a publicly funded organisation, it is kind of key to sort of address this question of how do we measure the impact of this funding. So policymakers, OS communities and funders all want to know, is SDA funding effective? Is it a good use of taxpayer money? A kind of generalizable approach is extremely difficult because, as you can imagine, on the basis of the sort of projects that we work with, they're all very heterogeneous. Our work is also very heterogeneous. It covers lots of different ecosystems, uses and goals. It's also very difficult to do any kind of attribution because obviously project activity is influenced by a lot of different external factors, not just funding. And we also suffer from the fact that we're a relatively novel instrument. So we have maybe 60 odd projects that we can't easily compare. You know, there isn't a curl A or a curl B per se, and we don't have long pre or post funding histories. Well, in some cases we have long pre-funding histories, but certainly not a long tail of funding afterwards, or after the funding periods. So attribution and accountability are challenging, and we're lacking a bit of clear evidence to answer this basic question. Does public funding make a measurable difference to critical open source projects? The way we're going about this for our MVP is to try and break this question down. So in this instance, what we're talking about is public funding as the duration of contracted work for specific repositories. A measurable difference we're treating as a longitudinal analysis of chaos metrics before, during, and after funding period. And then finally, critical open source projects in this instance actually means the individual open source infrastructure repositories where the work was conducted. So certain constraints, certain limitations, but we're trying to make this viable and see if this is actually doable. With that, I will hand over to Laia, who's going to talk about our MVP.
Cool. So yeah, after sort of breaking down this rather broad and complicated and hard to approach question into smaller part, we approached the analysis through the selection of 3 relevant use cases. We did this manual sampling of 3 cases with well-defined intervention on different dimensions on open source software health. We chose Ruby Gems, the Python package index, and Yocto for different reasons. Ruby Gems focused on improvements in maintainer quality life and community responsiveness. The Python package index focused more on code velocity and adoption of tooling. And Yocto focused on project velocity, test coverage, and contributor engagement. The idea is that since these interventions target distinct but quantifiable aspects of the maintenance, they provide clear cases for evaluating whether the STF funding is detectable in the repository level metrics. Aside from this, each project is also emblematic of open source infrastructure and is widely depended upon. So after this, we moved on to the data extraction via the Augur software. We ran the data collection on August of 25, and here we started to notice some limitations of the data we were going to use. More specifically, depending on where these different projects host, their workflows, basically. Python package index and Ruby Gems do host all their information on GitHub, so they are directly, the data is directly easy to query from Augur. But Yocto only maintains a GitHub mirror, which provides only partial observability. This is why some of the different descriptive metrics are rather small. For example, the number of closed issues is only of 44 as compared to 1,000 and 2K for Ruby Gems or Python package index. But aside from this, we moved on to doing some analysis for each repository level, and we have some initial results. As I mentioned before, for Ruby Gems, we are focusing on whether the STF funding correlates with reducing maintainer workload, seen in faster resolution and lower backlog, and an increased contributor engagement, seen through a higher throughput of community-submitted changes. The specific chaos metrics that we used to measure this were the time to issue resolution, change in request duration, and the number of new issues per month. As we said before, we approached this through a longitudinal analysis and some comparisons of the average metrics before, during, and after the funding period. As we can see, the longitude in the plot with the historical analysis, and in the table with this median differences analysis, the median time to issue resolution decreased during and after the funding period, which is a good sign. And we applied the same for the number of new issues per month, and the other metric. We can see also in the new issues per month that the number decreased during and after the funding period. It went from a median of 8 new issues per month before the funding to 5.5 after the funding. And for the duration of the change requests, we also see a decrease in the number during and after the funding period. For the Python package index, we also first define an evaluation question, and then we define the chaos metrics. The specific evaluation question was if in the period in which the STF funded the work, there was it was associated with an accelerated migration to modern tooling, which could be seen in higher commit velocity, an increased adoption of the software, and faster integration of contributions. The specific metrics we looked for here were the number of code change commits, the number of change requests, and the number of downloads. Well, we did the same, but in this case, we only show the before and after, where we see improvements in both of the metrics for code commits and change requests in the, before and after the funding period. It's important to note that for the code commits, we focus specifically on the repositories available for the Python package index that were worked on during the funding period. But still, there was an improvement in the metrics. And when we try to approach the number of downloads, here's where we run into our first limitation, because we noticed that it wasn't possible to do a historical analysis or longitudinal, because there was no historical data available on the software. Augur only takes a snapshot of the repository's general information in a specific moment, but it wasn't possible to compare before and after the funding period. After this, we moved on to Yocto, where the evaluation question was whether the funded work improved project velocity and ecosystem health, lowering barriers for contributors. We wanted to look at the test coverage, the defect resolution duration, and the change request closure ratio. And here is where we started to run into more limitations. The first one is that when we looked at the table of test coverage on Augur, it appeared completely empty. And the second big limitation that made us unavailable to do any metrics was that our metrics came from the issues, and we realized that we only had 94 total issues registered on Augur, and even when we tried to do the defect resolution duration, we had to filter more issues, and we ended with only 44. So we realized that due to Yocto storing their main workflows in their own Git, it wasn't possible to do the metrics that we wanted to do for this project. So after this, I will return to Paul.
Yeah, so coming back to this, just to recap, our general approach was trying to retroactively understand what was the overall goal of the funded work and then apply these chaos metrics, looking at the work from a kind of historical perspective. There are obvious kind of limitations to this approach, and some that we can kind of overcome. We obviously looked at initially data that's restricted to GitHub and GitLab. Augur's data is generally pretty comprehensive and really, really helpful for us to try and make this case. We can definitely suggest that this approach is valid and can be spun out across our different projects. There is, notionally a positive impact that we can sort of correlate with STF's funding. It's not necessarily that robust of an argument yet, but we're building the case. And it potentially provides us with a kind of benchmark analysis. There are a number of ways in which we can kind of expand this research. So first of all, obviously we want to expand our coverage, so get more projects, test out different measures of different metrics for different types of work that was done, incorporate more data sources, perhaps something like ecosystems normalized with Augur data. We'd also like to apply some more complex metrics. So most of the metrics that we applied there were pretty simple numbers, but there are a few metrics that Cadence proposes that could be really useful in this case. We're also discussing bundling multiple metrics to match different types of work funded. So if we work from categorizing the different types of contracts we have, we can then say, okay, these are metrics that we think are appropriate for work that covers increased tooling or infrastructure work or documentation or community building. In the longer term, I also want to see if we can try and balance levels of analysis. So work up from repo level effects to org effects through to ecosystem effects, because all of the projects that we're looking at are kind of central nodes in major ecosystems, and it would be really, really compelling for us as a digital infrastructure funder to say that this is having, as it were, a net overall positive impact upon an ecosystem. Also, and this is kind of a question for our organizational development, it would be great if we can incorporate the metrics themselves earlier to avoid this kind of retrospective application. So actually talk with projects themselves when we're scoping work and say to them, hey, what metrics do you think we should use to measure the outcomes of this work by, and how can we complement that with the reporting that they provide at the end of each contract to build to a really compelling case for the efficacy of our work. And then lastly, huge, big, complex ask, but we would obviously like to move from correlation to causality. But that is going to be extremely difficult given the limitations that we have around our data set and the actual population of projects we've worked with. So for now, at least, we're going sort of in depth on projects rather than broad and across projects. Yeah, there we go. That's it from our side. Any questions? Sorry. Khalil, shoot.
Yeah, thanks both for sharing your research. Very interesting. I just have one question. I'm curious to know whether you've shown these findings to the maintainers and projects that you have funded and tested them with them to see if it checks out for them or if there are any surprises.
We haven't yet, but we did do a round of basically checking in with the projects and asking them if they were okay with us running this kind of analysis and cross-referencing it with the reports that we already have. So all of the projects are required to submit a kind of end of contract report, and on some level that kind of biases what we're looking for, because we already see in the reports, say for instance, project A has had a higher uptick of contributors, right? And then we look for that signal through the chaos metrics to kind of confirm it. I think it would be more interesting to actually sit down with the projects in advance of the contracted work to say to them, hey, where do you think we should be looking? But we haven't been able to do that just yet because we haven't incorporated this into our kind of scouting and scoping phases. Alexandros? Oh, sorry, Kilian, did you have a follow-up?
Oh, I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. So my question is about the PyPI ecosystem you analyzed specifically. While you were presenting, I was checking the GitHub organization. So they have 14 repositories. Which of, maybe I missed it, you said at some point you considered the ones which were active during the time of funding. Is that correct? So was it like 4 or 5 of them, or how many of these 14 repositories did you consider in the end?
So we were looking at 2 very specific ones, the ones that were specified by the community as the ones that they were going to work on. So as OpenMSL and cryptography. And the advantage of having the reports and looking at this after the fact is that in some instances they will specifically state, which repos were worked on and even which issues, which is very helpful for us. But we haven't yet kind of considered, as it were, the kind of cross-org effects, right? So one thing that would be really interesting to see is, as maintainers are paying more attention to a given repository, is there a negative effect, if you will, for other repositories? Like, attention paid to a specific repository also assumes that maybe maintainers aren't working on other ones, right? And we need to sort of figure out how we can kind of balance that perspective.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries. Cool. I guess that's it from our side. Clay and Dawn, should we move on to the next topic in the agenda?
Yeah, that sounds good. So I'll be the master of ceremony from now onwards. Um, I've just shared a link to the spreadsheet that we're going to use in the chat. Hope that works for everyone. So we've been meeting for a little over 6 months now. And oh, Paul, would you mind muting yourself? Great, thank you. Yeah, so we've been meeting for a little over 6 months now, and we thought that it's a good moment to do a little retrospective. Yeah, to come together and reflect on what we think has worked well and what could be improved, and yeah, to discuss those things and kind of agree on actions that we can take to improve this working group, and maybe even yeah, expand our community and get new contributors to come along. So before I talk us through the agenda and the rules, I just wanted to ask if it's anyone's first time doing a retrospective where we review and discuss things that we want to continue, stop, and start. Okay, I see one hand. So I'll just give a kind of brief overview. So there are different types of retrospectives. Oh, actually, before that, should I share my screen? Would that be helpful? Or should we? Yeah? Okay. Let me just. Oof, I'm getting a lot of exclamation marks, which don't look very encouraging. Zoom is telling me I need to change my settings. Let's see if this works. Give me a second. Okay, sorry, I need to restart Zoom, which is, could someone else share their screen? Maybe we can do it that way, and then I'll just talk us through it.
Yeah, I can share. That's fine.
Right, thank you. Um, okay. So brilliant. Okay, so there are different flavors and approaches to doing retrospectives, or which are sometimes referred to as retros. A common one is stop, start, continue. I've gone for 4 boxes here, which are continue. So those are things that you think are working well, and we should just continue as we're doing them. The next one is improve. So things that want to continue, but really have to improve. So we would ideally want to avoid overlap between the continue and improve. So just to be clear, improve is we should only continue on the condition that we actually improve them. And then down, if you go down, we have drop or stop, things that you think are not that useful or not going well, and then things we should start. So new ideas that you want to bring to the group. So how are we going to do this? So John, if you don't mind going up so we can see the agenda. So we have like roughly 5 activities. So the first is we're going to spend about 5 minutes working in silence, adding actions to each box. I ask you all to be as concise as possible. There's no kind of lower or upper limit to how many actions you should add, just whatever comes to mind. Yeah, it'd be great if you could add them to the boxes. After that, I'll take a minute or so to cluster actions. Either I can do this by myself, or if others would like to volunteer, we can divide the boxes amongst ourselves. Then we're going to take a minute to add pluses in columns which I've hidden for this because I don't want them to be distracting for the first in the first activity. But later I'll unhide them, and we'll be able to add pluses to actions that we think should be priority actions. In these kind of retros, this is referred to as dot voting. Then we'll spend the rest of the session discussing the actions and the prioritized actions and agreeing on our priorities. So in terms of house rules, ask everyone to please be respectful, and that includes not interrupting others when they're speaking. Please focus on providing constructive feedback. Don't point fingers at anyone or blame anyone for things that haven't gone well, and aim to be concise when adding actions. So those are the house rules. So before we get started, does anyone have any questions? Is that all clear? Excellent. So I'm going to start a timer for 5 minutes, and right, started so we can get going. Please, reminder, silence, and yeah, happy ideating. Okay, we have about 30 seconds left. Okay, time is up. Thank you, everybody. See, we've been able to add several ideas for how we can improve the working group. That's great. So the next activity is to cluster the actions. I'd actually like the idea of splitting this up so that we can get through it quicker and get to the group discussion. So I'll do the continue box. Would anyone like to volunteer to go through the improve one quickly? No. Okay, then let me just, okay, let's just go over it together. So what we have to do now is just quickly cluster actions just in case there are overlapping ones. That helps us focus the group discussion that's to come. So looking at continue, split between research updates and speakers was good. Expert presentations, diversity of speakers. So I see a lot about the talks, research updates from the group, great. Presentations from invited people, excellent. Research slide series, welcoming atmospheres. Okay, so it's the presentation, expert and guest speakers, presentations from the group, and the atmosphere are kind of the key strengths that we should continue. Improve are maybe monthly instead of bi-weekly meetings. Okay. Low number of participants. Yep. Use of GitHub repo, knowledge sharing, connections related communities. Once in a while, longer sessions, little time for Q&A. Yep. More focus on digital sovereignty, high dependency on proprietary solutions, e.g. Eurostack, and presence at open source meetups and conferences. Okay. I think we don't have to rest of them. And then drop. Oh, nothing that we should drop. And then start, develop, upload shareable products to our GitHub repo, more deep dives into data metrics that get to funding impact. And finally, once in a while, merge session with data science working group in case it's possible. Okay, great. Nice. So we're now, coming to activity 3 where we do our dot voting. So I'm going to unhide the columns. So we're going to take a minute and add plus signs next to the actions that we would like to prioritize. So let me set the timer. Here we go. So yeah, we have a minute starting now.
Okay, it doesn't like us adding plus signs because it thinks it's a formula. So let's go with another symbol. Let's pick another symbol that we want to use.
Yeah, should we put a P for priority?
Perfect.
Okay, that's minute up. Do we need more time? Okay, I'll give everyone about 20 more seconds. Excellent. How are we doing? Does anyone need more time? No? Great. So we've reached the group discussion, so we have about 10 more minutes. So this will be the focus of the remainder of the session. So I'm just going to start with the ones where I see the most P's, and then invite folks who either wrote the action or added a P to share their thoughts on why they think we should prioritize that and and maybe some ideas for what we could do. So the first one I see is the research slide series of platforms to discuss ongoing research results with relevant people. Would anyone like to share their thoughts on that one?
I could say something. So I wrote that. Even though I haven't like presented anything yet, it may come in the future if there is anything more done. I'm ready to talk about it. For me, it's super interesting to see what's going on in that field where people present either their research or research they found interesting. So it's way more enjoying rather than reading all these things on our own than sitting together here and basically talking about it.
Yeah, I see a lot of nods. I agree as well. So let's continue doing that. The next one I see is the welcoming atmosphere that we have. Would anyone like to share some thoughts about that one?
I also wrote that one, so
All
maybe
right, nice.
add some more words here. For me, like basically all the people were new, and I'm a PhD student here in Munich, and also the field in general was new for me. So it was great to see that there are people somehow parsing, talking about things where I can basically catch up on ongoing developments, and at some point when I feel ready, just jump in and be able to present something. So at some point that was emphasized at the beginning, that it's also possible to just start by listening and then at some point jump in. I really felt comfortable when hearing that. So I guess other new joiners will do the same or will feel the same. That's why I wrote that down.
Great, thank you so much. I think it's music to all of our ears. That I mean, and everyone's plays a really important role in creating that welcoming atmosphere. So, well done to all of us. I think the next one I see is expert presentations / presentations from invited people. I personally think that's something that we should prioritize. Just an improvement point that just comes to mind now is retaining some of those experts who've come along. We've had several really, great speakers come, but they just came, presented, and perhaps they didn't see the value in coming to future meetings. Not sure what their reasons are. But maybe something we could improve is retention of guest speakers. So I'll just take a note of that.
Some of that might actually have to do with the time of the meeting,
Mm,
because looking at the attendees, all of us are in Europe, I think.
yeah.
And so this is 8 starts at 7 a.m. on the West Coast. So I know, for example, Luis Villa, who came in and did a presentation, said that, this was like breakfast time with his kids. And so he would love to come and attend, but the time just didn't work for him.
Mm, okay.
I like this time. It's not one of my late meetings, but I wonder if this is part of the problem.
Yeah. Let's take note of that.
Yeah, we don't need to solve it here, but we should think about that.
Maybe we could shift it somehow to be like I don't know, every 2 weeks friendly for Europe, every other 2 weeks friendly for American time. I don't know if that works. To be honest, I'm not
Mm,
into time zone management, but maybe that's an idea.
Dawn, do you have experience in alternating meeting times based on time zones?
I a little bit, yes. Generally people find it confusing. They just don't know when to show up.
Okay.
But I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to solve it now, as you said, but let's take note of that. Okay, now that we're in the improve box, the one with the most, or two with the most P's are low number of participants and use of GitHub repo for knowledge sharing. So let's start with the low number of participants. Would anyone like to speak to that point?
Yeah, I wrote that one, and related with the previous one, of course, that, for example, we had speakers and I don't see those speakers coming to the future ones. I think one of the things that we are doing the announcement of the meetings only in the Slack, which I think relatively have no low number of people. Maybe we can do announcements on social media. I don't think, for instance, we shared it in Open Forum Europe mailing list, for example, or NGI groups. Maybe every time before the meeting, once the agenda is clear, we can do an announcement in social media related networks. But it's surprisingly, we have low number of participants. We have excellent speakers, interesting conversation, very related to all the conversations that we are having. So I would expect more people, but yeah. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we should look at how we can better promote these meetings for sure. Love that idea.
Yeah, I've taken note of that. That's a good point. Thanks, Serkan. Would anyone else like to share any comments or thoughts on that point before we move to the next one?
It might also be a good idea sorry, I realise I'm in here twice. It might also be a good idea to have in-person meetups, possibly, like on the sidelines of some of the major summits and events, because we all, a lot of us go to the same thing.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree.
And I only got one P, but I'm gonna try to promote what I put there is having, I guess, less frequent meetings. That's basically trying into figuring out how we can get more participants. But of course, if you would like to meet more often, that's also fine. I just wanted for us to think about it.
Oh, thanks. Oh, sorry, someone was speaking.
No, I was just saying, sorry for being late. It's just, I think are we talking about like how can we improve the attendance of the meeting and others?
Yeah.
Like what I found actually, like a weekly, I mean, just give an example. I don't know, probably that sounds like very opposite as many people thinks. Like whenever I have weekly meetings, I actually attend them because I know I don't have to, I just know that I know the exact time and I don't need to think about, okay, we're skipping this week, but we're taking it next week, things like that. And also, I'm sorry, like this time, 10 a.m. for me, uh, it's a little bit hard for me to remember just because, like, usually I have meeting in the afternoon, but I'm sure that that's harder for European people. So, like, just want to share my feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, those are really good points. Yeah, and on the monthly and biweekly meetings, yeah, a lot of the chaos meetings are biweekly. We also don't have a lot of participation in some of the other biweekly meetings either. It tends to be some of these tend to be very small but loyal groups, which I would classify this one as. So I see a lot of the same faces kind of, in most of the meetings. The challenge with monthly is that if it happens to fall on the week of a conference, then we end up not meeting for 2 months, which is a long time because I know there are a lot of conferences that we end up canceling meetings for. That's always my challenge with monthly meetings. Other people probably have different thoughts.
This is something that I've thought about as well in the past. And I think maybe where I've landed is maybe we could go for like a hybrid approach where we aim to have bi-weekly meetings, but if we don't have, you know, let's say an agenda or we haven't locked in guest speakers for a session, that it should be okay. We just have a culture of saying, okay, it's okay to skip this one. Has anyone else thought of that, or was that? What do you think about that?
Yes, I think that could work. Having that culture of like it's okay if it's skipped, and we don't feel like okay, then I don't know, the group is having less relevance. No, it's more about the timing and us being busy um it's beneficial if we can meet, but it's okay if not.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Yeah, I was just thinking just something that kind of perhaps ties the two together, but the two threads. But perhaps we could also make a bit more use of our own Slack channel, both to share articles as and when we come across them, but also to gauge the temperature of when people are up for meeting or not. I know that's a bit more organic and loose, but might be a way of one avenue to explore.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And there are other groups within the CHAOSS project that tend to do that on a regular basis. So for example, we, in the data science working group, there's, we tend to have a fair bit of discussion about various things in the Slack channel. Whereas this one, I kind of announced the meetings, and other than that, there's not a lot going on in the Slack channel. It would be nice to have a bit more in between meetings.
Absolutely. So just in the interest of time, I think perhaps we should go down to the start box. I think we have 2 minutes left. So first is develop and upload shareable products to GitHub repo. I wrote this one. I think the same applies to Slack. And by product, I put products in inverted commas because like it doesn't have to be like, you know, a shiny product, but I think we in our meetings we've had a lot of great discussions and great talks, and it'd be great to I don't know figure out a way in which we could record kind of key kind of findings or things we've progressed on with others, and that could also be a way for to attract new participants and contributors. So I don't really have like a roadmap or blueprint for how we would do that, but I think that's something that we should explore.
Yeah, again, in the data science working group, we do this quite a lot. So we upload code that we use to generate some of the research that we have. We upload research artifacts. There's quite a bit that we put in the GitHub repository. And that was, so I wrote the next one below that, and that was kind of along the lines of what I was thinking as well. So the deep dives into data and metrics are not necessarily appropriate for a meeting. Maybe they are, but having more of those, like getting more into the technical bits of measuring the impact, I think would be good. Like, like for example, I don't know, Paul, if you could share any of the code that you use to generate any of the data that you have, but if we could share some of that, that would be great.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. I mean, like, from what I recall, we didn't want to be too prescriptive with the group in the beginning, and it's a kind of open forum. But if we can provide people with the resources to sort of replicate their own approaches, that would be amazing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we can share, some of the things that we're using and see if they're helpful for anybody else. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to use them, but I think sharing
Definitely.
information gives people a good head start.
Yeah, I love that idea.
Excellent. So I think we're at time now. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for coming along today and participating in this retro. Just going back to the just one last thing on that. So I think there's a lot of good stuff here, and let's I guess continue this conversation in Slack, and I think Don and Paul, perhaps we as co-chairs could also have a convo about things that we could improve for the next session even. And then in terms of the agenda, I think there's one more thing. I just need to pull it up. There's a talk coming up done Dawn, did you add it to the agenda? Or was
Oh
it you?
yeah, they're not here. They're not necessarily talks. They're more reminders. So there's a digital resilience forum that's being held in Madrid on October 29th. It's actually free to attend. So if you're in Europe and or near Madrid, it's being mostly organized by the folks at Bitergia, although I'm also on the organizing team there. And then FOSS Backstage, the CFP is already open and it closes at the end of October. And that's a great conference. I know that we did a talk about the funding toolkit last year that was pretty well received. And so I think having some funding talks there would be great. And we don't have anything on the agenda for the 8th. Is there anybody who wants to do a research update? Okay. If you change your mind, let us know in Slack and we'll figure out something else for the agenda.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Right. Thanks so much.
everyone.
Cheers.
Have a good
Everybody.
week. Bye.
Bye.